Hey there, Knicks fans. What's going on? It's your boy, Jonathan Macri, with you for another edition of the Knicks Film School Podcast. I am coming at you bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. It is a little after 11 a.m. on Sunday morning after I had, for me, late night out last night, although I have a feeling the individual that I'm on here with, his night may have been a little later because he's young and he's not old like me. Jeremy Cohen, hello, sir. How are you?
Hey, John, I'm good. I'm tired, but that's also a perpetual state of tiredness. It's not necessarily a Saturday night hang, but yeah, I'm tired and excited for us to have this podcast. Here we are. Got some coffee going.
You know, I finished my. I should have made a half a pot. I asked my lovely wife Dolores was kind enough to make me a cup of coffee because that's all I asked for, but I don't know that the one cup is doing what I needed to do, but I'm going to try to press on through. So we had a fun night last night. We should just come out and tell everybody who may not be aware. We had a watch party at T Squared Social in the city for the Knicks and the Pelicans, and it was quite a time was had by all. Although for probably about an hour, it was not the best of times as we were wondering what we were getting ourselves into against this 5-win basketball team. But all is well that ends well, as they say. And the Knicks got another victory in what was a light week, only 2 games. They stayed rolling. And I guess probably the best place to start is like, we could get into the specifics of the game that we both watched last night, but like, I don't know. We're a third of the way through the season. They're 18-10. We could go through some of the metrics of that 18-10. I feel like the theme of our shows now through 2 months has been like stability. When are we going to get to a place of stability? When are we going to get to a place of consistency? And I feel like we've kind of come close. We've talked about it. We've danced around it. And I don't there's a part of me that's like doesn't want to be like mission accomplished, but I don't know. I'm feeling it's hard not to feel pretty good about the team given where they're at and where they've been kind of heading to for a while now.
Yeah, it's definitely not a mission accomplished type of vibe, unless we're going for that mission accomplished, in which case nothing was really accomplished. In which case, sure, I guess it is mission.
I want to be beyond that.
Yeah, well, I think we as a society need to be beyond that. But yes, you know, it's again more proof of concepts. The thing about I wasn't worried about last night's game, even right as they were losing by double digits. I
down 14 in the third. You were not
really
worried.
I did not waver. Truly, I swear I did not. And it's not because the Pelicans are a bad team. They're a better team than their record would indicate. Certainly,
I agree.
But there was something about the team where I felt like they were going to get it together. They've kind of been through some of the trench work that needs to get to that point. Do they play down to their competition from time to time? Yes, they absolutely can. But they're gelling. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They're playing good, unselfish basketball. I thought some of the cuts that they made and the off-ball movement was the best I've seen in a while. They're feeling themselves. And it took playing the starters the entire third quarter and much of the fourth, and for some who just did not really sit, but they got the job done, and it shows that when they need to put pedal to the metal, they can do it. They can pull one out.
I'm embarrassed that I don't know this, being obviously, needless to say, captain of the minutes police. Nobody monitors the minutes more than I do. But did Mikal Bridges play I'm looking it up right now because I always take a snapshot at halftime. Yeah, he was at 21 minutes at the half. Mikal Bridges finished with 45 minutes, so he played the entire second half. And Josh Hart was at 18 at the half. He finished with 42, so he played the entire second half. And then, of course, the guy that we will spend a lot of time talking about today, Jalen Brunson didn't quite play the entire second half. He took a 2-minute breather. Very kind of Tibbs to give him that 2 minutes. That 2 minutes is going to make all the difference this morning when he's getting up, not being able to, walk. Yeah, I thought Jeff Jeff and Sean did an awesome job on the post game. Thank you to them for filling in for me so I could have a kind of enjoyable night. I thought Jeff put it great. Like, serious people, if you're serious people, you figure out a way to win that game, because there are going to be nights in the NBA where you're facing a hot shooting team, and the Pelicans, for at least a large portion of that game, were like hitting shots. There are going to be nights where you're not hitting shots, and for a significant portion of that game, the Knicks were not hitting their threes. At least at the onset, they ended up shooting 40% because it's a really good offensive team. And like, there are going to be nights in the NBA where one or more of your key players are not having the best of nights. And I definitely don't want to, not going to sit here and bash Karl-Anthony Towns, because for reasons that we'll get into again, I want to touch on a lot of things in this episode because we had another notable game this week. But like, he probably had his worst game as a Knick. I asked Benji, like, what because I was staying next to him as Towns was like going through it, and Benji mentioned like the Houston game. I think this was, in terms of like detriment to his team, I think this was probably the bottom. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, the 3 fouls in the first half, that was very tough. Took him out of rhythm. Jericho Sims did a great job filling in.
I want to talk about Sims.
Yeah, but it's just he's so good. He did such an incredible game against Minnesota, and it just felt like the Knicks were playing down their best player. Of course, the Pelicans were playing down their 2 best players. But then when Jalen Brunson was off the court as well, it was frustrating because it's like, well, great, you have neither of your 2 best players on the court right now trying to survive. And then, of course, the Pelicans go into a zone, which for a team that's as good as the Knicks are from a shooting perspective feels, I don't know, would you call it embarrassing? At least in the moment, because it felt disrespectful, but it was working for them. So I understood why they did it.
It is, but at the same time, it's funny. I wasn't gonna go to this yet, but we can actually go to it now. I don't actually think it's that. Maybe not that it's not that much of an indictment. It is an indictment on in some ways of the fact that like the Knicks' 2 best players aren't on the floor and you can't generate any offense. And I think Mikal Bridges had a great game, and in general, Mikal Bridges has been really, really good for a while now. But that's, I guess, a little bit of a knock on the whole, that part of the theory of the trade, which is that you're bringing in another guy that can kind of create offense a little bit if you need, and we haven't really seen that from Bridges yet. The reason where I'm going to give them kind of a pass, and this is one of the things I wanted to cover today, I'm sure you saw the BS poll, the Bontemps straw poll come out this week, in which Tim Bontemps of ESPN polls 100 likely voters for MVP, and 2 Knicks finished in the top 10. And it's like, I know myself, I don't think about this team as like there's 2 guys and then there's everybody else. So I guess maybe what I wanted to ask you, like, should we be thinking about it in those terms, maybe more than we have? And I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah,
there are 2 top 10 NBA players this season. We get into a semantics argument about where Cat is on the pecking order of NBA players as a whole. But this season, the Knicks have 2 top 10 NBA players. And then there's everyone else. And now there are levels to that, right? It's not just like everyone else is a bottom feeder. No, I mean, Mikal Bridges, if you look at how he has played, in this month alone, but going back a bit further, he's been dominant. OG, his defense has been great. Offense has been struggling, but similar in how with Mikal Bridges needing time, we know who OG Anunoby is as a shooter. Deuce McBride just has been lights out. Cameron Payne has been a burst of energy for this team in transition off the bench. Josh Hart has I have not seen him hit as many buzzer shots as he has.
Another one last night.
Right. I mean, he's also supposed to be one of the weakest links in that starting 5 from a spacing perspective. He has not been. So they're playing as a team, but make no mistake, they're led by what is really maybe the best pick and roll duo in the NBA. I mean, it certainly was last I saw by points per possession
numbers
a week and a half ago. So they're the engine that makes this team go, but you gotta have wheels, you gotta have axles. I'm not a car person, so I'm gonna stop listing things that make up cars and make them go. But you need things, and then you got gasoline, but you need money to pay for the gasoline. I don't know how
that's what we should do. Let's see who's the first person who can't think of an additional car part. I think how far do you think we'd get? I don't know that we'd make it to double digits.
I mean, I certainly wouldn't really need Marissa Tomei to step in here and help a little bit because I know you'd love that.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, sure, but
60, she still looks great.
yeah, of course.
But yeah, it's especially embarrassing for me. My first real job was at a Bay Ridge Lexus service department, so I should know about these sorts of things, and I'll just leave it at that I should know. No, the theory of the team, in no uncertain terms, is Brunson and Towns are going to be the foundation of the best offense in the league, and thus far, you've mentioned this a few times throughout the season now, and you brought it up again. This idea of proof of concept. We haven't had to worry about that at all. Like almost like maybe the first couple weeks we had to worry about it a little bit when Brunson was kind of figuring out the balance between, all right, I'm going to call my number versus I'm going to get my teammates involved, and that he solved that problem within 10 games, not even, and now he's like, I mean, he's operating at an MVP caliber level, which is, why I was a little surprised that he finished lower than Towns in the poll. A little surprised, but also not surprised when you kind of think about narratives and stuff. And Towns has been a big part of the narrative for the Knicks so far this season. And then Towns is just like shooting. He's having the best shooting season of his career.
Mm-hmm.
And so he already might have been the best shooting big man ever, maybe. And now that he's above 60 effective field goal percentage, it's wild. So like, yeah, that part of it's great. And I think the other part, other than Brunson just detonating the Pelicans last night, the other half of the proof of concept was the defensive part of it. And I think if there is a through line that I'm taking solace from, and I'll pull up the stats in a second, it is, again, it's not been linear from like game 1 to what are we at now, game 28, in terms of like defensive, like every performance is defensive performance is better than the last, but like the line is going in the right direction. Like it's not like that's been a roller coaster. Like the consistency overall, yes, that's been a roller coaster, but like slowly but surely it's trending up and up and up and up for the defensive purposes.
It absolutely has. It's ramped up. A huge portion of that can be given credit to of Mikal Bridges, who has really stepped it up. John, I don't know about you. I have not seen too many people clamoring about the haul of picks that the Knicks gave up for Mikal Bridges.
Not lately.
No, I don't know why exactly. Could be just a guess. It could be because he's playing up to a level that makes that gripe not really feel valid at the moment. Because why are we fixating on that? So it's great. But no, I'm going to save some of my thoughts for the defensive portion for coming up on a future segment, and not too distant future segment. But it's been great, and it's nice to see. It just takes time to adjust. And I mean, you track this as well, so catch me on it. But this is a similar trend, is it not? For starting a season, I mean, usually the offense kind of catches up a little bit more, but the defense, it just takes time. It takes time to round into form. And of course, I'm not saying throw out stats we don't like, throw out games that we just don't care for. But that Celtics game was so brutal, so bad that it just, I mean, now that we have more of a sample size, it doesn't matter as much. But for the most part, it weighed down the stats so heavily from the defensive end.
I think you read my mind, because I was literally, as you were talking, going to pull this stat, and okay, here we are. You may, I hope I'm not stealing something that you're going to pull from later in the show. So the Knicks gave up, I don't know, 300 points per 100 possessions or something in the opening night game against the Celtics. Since opening night, so we're taking away one game. So the last 27 games, the Knicks have a 111.1 defensive rating, which is 0.1 points per 100 possessions behind the Dallas Mavericks. Dallas Mavericks, very good team. Had a nice win last night for 10th place. So they are in 11th again, if we're excluding opening night. And Dallas is in 10th, 111.0. Knicks are in 11th, 111.1. And then the Miami Heat are right there also at 111.2 in 12th. And then there's a gap between 12th and 13th, and there's also a gap between 10th and 9th. So the Knicks, again, if you take out opening night, they're in a nice little hole there. And like, is that cherry picking? I guess a little bit to some extent, but I don't know. I don't feel too bad about that. It was a crazy night. It was ring night. It was all the hoopla and everything. And it's, so I'm pretty encouraged by that.
Yeah. And again, it matters because it's part of the data, but it just was so bad that it threw off a lot of it, especially in the earlier parts when each game mattered more than it does right now. So eager to play the Celtics again, see what happens. Eager to play the Cavs again, but on the right track, locking in a little bit more, getting more comfortable. And also when you feel good on offense, it may translate defensively. And that was something that, and perhaps this is a segue, but I always felt with Julius Randle that when he was on the Knicks, when his offense was good, he was more engaged defensively. And then when things sputtered, he lost focus on the defensive end a little bit more because he was so busy hunting for his shot and not necessarily playing in rhythm. And of course, then Knicks don't have to really worry about Julius Randle anymore. Not their problem.
Let's talk about Julius. I want to do a quick thing because I could hear some people probably listening saying, well, the Knicks have had a cakewalk schedule. It's gonna continue to be somewhat cakey over the next couple of weeks, which again, they have to continue to take advantage of that. They've done a pretty good job taking advantage of that so far. But just looking at the remaining strength of schedule, I'm on Tankathon here. The Knicks have the 9th hardest remaining strength of schedule. So that's not, I mean, I'm fine with that. It's not like they have the hardest or the second hardest. They have the 9th hardest, which means that they've played a representative schedule, I think, so far. But if you look at some of the other teams that are doing well, Memphis has a great record. They have the hardest remaining strength of schedule in the entire league. Dallas has the same record as the Knicks right now. They have the 8th hardest remaining strength of schedule in the league. Houston has had an outstanding beginning of this season. They have the 11th hardest remaining strength of schedule of the league. Even Cleveland is like right in the middle of the pack. The only teams that are probably you're going to see bust out ahead. Boston has the 4th easiest remaining strength of schedule. Milwaukee, 6th easiest. And then Oklahoma City has the 8th easiest. But that kind of checks out for me because I feel like I know Oklahoma City's maybe going through an issue or two now, but there have been, if you look at the advanced stats, there have been 2 teams that have been maybe not head and shoulders above the rest, but because the Cavs have been really good. But it's Boston and OKC, and then there's a little drop, and then there's Cleveland, and then there's another drop, and I think the Knicks are right there, which a third of the way into the season, I'm pretty fine with. I'm okay with where they're at right now.
As you should be.
Yeah.
I mean, also, Boston has had time clearly to gel. OKC even has their core. They've had time to get better. And also, I don't think the sky is falling. I know you're not you're saying this is the case for OKC, but I thought it was really one game that exposed their weaknesses. As a whole, still doing fine. Would like for them. If I were OKC, I'd still want to find more creation. Maybe less so from your big 3, but someone who can do something off the dribble. But either way, these are teams that are at the top because they've had time to get there. And this is really the first season where the Knicks have made major changes and are trying to incorporate that. We've seen them add in the past, but with this starting unit, I mean, when you think about the fact that 365 days ago, 3 of the 5 players, or no, 2 of the 5, no, 3 of the 5 starting players in OG Anunoby,
3 of the 5
Bridges, and Karl-Anthony Towns were not even Knicks. They weren't even on the team. So I'd say they've gotten to a good spot. And usually what happens, the Knicks do something at a deadline or by the deadline, shot in the arm, and then they find a further groove. So if they're clicking now, and if they're able to kind of maintain that level of homeostasis and then get someone that revives them even further, watch out. That's pretty good.
That starting 5, I don't know if you want to talk about the minutes. They are, according to Cleaning the Glass, they have played, see if I can do some really quick math here, 163, yeah, that checks out, 163 more possessions than the next most used 5-man unit. Houston is second. They've played 757 possessions. The Knicks starting 5 has played 920 possessions. And that's despite the fact that Towns has missed, Towns has missed 2 games and Hart missed 1. Did I miss anything? I think those are the only ones that I missed. So a lot of minutes, but in those minutes, plus 7.3 per 100, which is right about what the team as a whole has been doing. That's about the team's net rating, with a lead offense and an average defense. And again, like I gave you the statistic before. We could sit here and we could, search for like their ratings and all that stuff over the last whatever it is, 17 games. I think they're like 13-4, whatever. Like we could cherry pick all we want. Like it's heading in the right direction. That's all good and encouraging. I feel before we move on and give out our awards and everything and make predictions, I feel like we should talk about Julius briefly. I know this is Knicks Film School, and I also want to honor Andrew had a great tweet earlier today, bringing back the DOJ, excuse me, label for DJ.
The defender of Julius, yes.
The defender of Julius, because DJ, and you know what? I'm so happy that DJ did that, because he basically went on Twitter today and was like, listen, Julius is going through it right now, or the Wolves are going through it right now, but Julius is being made to be a little bit of a scapegoat. And, Knicks fans are, I think, piling on a little bit more than he would like to see. He's not wrong, because there's other issues going on there. And it's not just Julius, just like it was never just Julius here when things were going not great here. But if to bring it back to the Knicks, and that's why I do think this is relevant to bring up on a Knicks podcast, you've been as big a proponent of this front office as anyone over the years. And even when moves that they have made have maybe not worked out immediately, you always bring it back to the bigger picture and them looking at the bigger picture. And I think if you look at the Towns transaction, there were moments at the beginning of this year where I think it would have been tempting to say, oh, the Knicks, for the first time, they blinked. They said, we invested all these picks in Mikal Bridges. We lost Hartenstein, even though they knew they were going to lose Hartenstein, but before they traded for Bridges. But I digress. But like Mitch injury stuff, this and that. Did they blink? Did they do a stupid thing just because they're like, oh shit, we don't have a center this year. We have to go get a center. And I think the further we get away from the transactions of the summer, the more it is very clear, like, oh no, they had a vision. And even if it's a bumpy road to get to the final endpoint of that vision, they knew what they were bringing in. And maybe they also were very, very cognizant of what they were sending out. And last thing I'll say before I flip it over to you is, Fred didn't think it was any kind of revolutionary reporting, but I thought it was notable this summer or this week, a couple days ago, when in his article on the trade before going into the Towns return to Minnesota, which we should probably touch on at some point, he said that the Knicks and Julius Randle's camp were, I forget what is it, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but like they were never close. Like there was never any meaningful extension negotiations, which like we could assume what that means. So I just said a lot of things, and I'm not sure that I made a point anywhere in there, but I'll throw it to you. Like I think it's if you're looking for yet another vote of confidence, to have another vote of confidence in the front office, I think we're kind of getting one right now.
Yeah, I'd say first off, for Julius, always appreciated his time in New York, warts and all. But when you talk about the front office and you talk about the players that they've brought in, you also, I mean, the Knicks have done a great job of assembling a team of players that clearly like each other, that hold each other accountable. It was tough with Julius Randle, of course, to feel like there was that level of accountability, to feel like there was a player that understood his role, would take responsibility in such a way, and then be better about it. And that simply wasn't Julius. And I was talking with Benji about this last night. he mentioned the Dane Moore podcast, and he talked about how Dane said, Finch has to hold Tibbs accountable, and we were laughing about that has to hold Randle accountable, and laughing at the fact, like, how many times do we hear about a coach that, they have to hold this player accountable? At what point do we perhaps wonder, is this player willing to embrace accountability to such a degree? I do believe he is a level of a scapegoat. It's hard when you are traded for a franchise player and you're not performing up to a level deemed acceptable. It's also tricky when the Timberwolves, who were the number 1 team in the NBA last year in 3-point shooting, are currently 14th.
In percentage, they were number 1 last year?
Mm-hmm.
Holy
Yes,
shit,
they
I
were.
didn't realize that.
Yep, the
That's a great
2024-25
call.
season.
Did not even
wait,
realize. Wow.
or hold on. Was it give me a second. I had it. I swear I had it, and then it changed on me. It might have been the year before. I have
Whatever.
no idea
they
what's
were
going on.
very good at
They were
shooting
very
threes
good.
at some
Now
point in
I'm
recent
doubting
past.
myself. I don't know. I don't
I'll
know
look it
what
up, I'll
happened
look
with
it up,
Cleveland
I'll
Glass.
look
All right, it was the 2023-24 season. So that was last year. So
Yeah, it was last
that was good.
year.
All right, I
Okay.
got Cleveland popping up. It freaked me out. I don't know why, but no,
Damn
it was last year.
Cavs always getting in the way.
Exactly. This year, what it is they're 14th. So, and then when you look around them at the players, I mean, Ant, it's got to start at the top. Ant has not been playing quite to the caliber that I think a player of his talent should be. Gobert never really was a fan of that trade, and it's just they've kind of compounded the problem. They paid him quite a lot of money for an extension.
I was about to say, on top of the money they were already inheriting. Yeah.
Right, and then Mike Conley, there's some wear and tear that's very visible. Dillingham is a rookie. McDaniels has not shot the ball in the way that he has in the past. DiVincenzo, it feels like a lot of problems that then compound and make everything worse. Nickeil Alexander-Walker has been great for them, but he's a free agent. It just, they're in a position where I do not envy where they're at. But to kind of take a step back, it's then, all right, well, everyone in the Knicks, to me, feels like a likable person as well. Like, I would want to hang out with probably every single Knick. And you could have said that about Knicks in the past. Sure. And I don't know these people. They're just players.
No, we don't.
It's a parasocial relationship. But there's something about how they operate where you can tell there's joy. There's an understanding of what's at stake. And it just felt like it was tough to work with Julius, that there was a walking on eggshells type of thing. And yes.
Is that unfair? Because I
just said it. I don't think it is.
I could lie and sit here and be like, well, I've never thought that. Of course, every freaking Knicks fan has thought that.
No,
and if you haven't thought that, then I'm sorry, you haven't been you didn't watch. Like
there's a level of sensitivity with Julius, and I mean, seeing everyone has their own reasons. Seeing Julius not be on the court after the game, I mean, losing matters to him. Make no mistake, he hates losing, but also, I know that with this version of the Knicks, if they had lost that game to Minnesota, they wouldn't have walked off. I don't think a single player that is of note that we care about would have walked off. And that was Julius. And that's his prerogative. He's comfortable doing that. But it was, the clip going around of Brunson saying he left.
With the team employee was
Julius is entitled to walking away. But it kind of goes to the larger picture here of something about it just has always felt off, not just off the court, on the court with the efficiency. It's a tough situation for him, and it doesn't feel like it's going to get better, because when I see Timberwolves fans online screaming, "Get Julius Randle off my team," first off, I do feel for Julius to an extent there, but secondly, usually when there's a player that you're clamoring for to trade them, there's probably not a significant market for them, because if you love them, you wouldn't be saying trade them. So when they're not playing well and their value is lower, then you're looking to move them. And then it goes back to the further point for Minnesota, which is taking a franchise player and making a financial decision. And typically when you turn quality into quantity, it often doesn't really work out for you. And to think that this Minnesota team that looked like it was on the rise, and there's this new CBA that comes into play that hurts them financially, and they're comfortable moving one of their best players after they've moved him somewhat out of position. And then they brought in a guy that just isn't their guy and is not performing up to a certain level. It's It's a tough situation.
It is. It's just so hard with Julius because he is a guy who is not gonna have a Hall of Fame resume, but like I don't even know if I want to sit here and be like he's like one tier down from Hall of Fame. Like it depends on how many tiers you have, I guess. But like wildly accomplished NBA player, like truly incredible accomplishments on a personal accolade level. If you look at some of the stats he's put up and all those sorts of things, and yet you look and he so often gets boiled down to a couple of clips and a couple of moments, right? Like whether it was thumbs down or whether it's walking off the court or whether there was I know there was a moment where the Timberwolves had just like they won a game in like the last second, and earlier this season he like kind of just walks off and he doesn't seem like he's happy because whatever, maybe didn't get the ball, like, and which is why I respect DJ so much for being the defender of Julius, because it feels like someone needs to do it. It's just I do think it is telling that the fans of the teams that he is on and that watch him night after night after night, the ones who support him more do so out of like an obligation to like, come on guys, look at the whole picture, look at the production. It's not because I don't think feel like it is he's the things that he is doing are being like unfairly characterized. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I view him as an anti-hero in a lot of ways.
That's a great call.
It's not a knock on him. It's just it's someone who can perform at a high level, but there's enough about him or is maligned in such a way that he doesn't prosper. I mean, this is someone who was red hot in the first quarter, had 21 points in the first half, finished the game with 24.
Yeah.
And the clip that I see going around the most is the Mikal Bridges transition bucket.
Yeah.
Where Julius points to him and no one's got him.
How many times have we seen that?
Right. But we're all too familiar with that.
Yeah.
But it's deserving. And then you look at the stuff like you can view Julius exactly how you want. If you love him, you're gonna
Rorschach?
Yeah.
Rorschach test?
Rorschach test. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, look, if any Timberwolves fans are listening to this, it's never as bad with him as it feels when it's really bad. And then here's the nice thing about Julius. He could come out, then I don't know when the hell they play next or who they play next. He could come out the next game and have the best game of the season, and he'll make you feel okay. I was gonna say he'll make you feel okay about things, but really secretly you're like, oh great, he just boosted his trade value.
I mean, the next game was yesterday where the Timberwolves played terribly, and then they came back. I was shocked, and then they lost. And then Julius finished with 16 points on 13 shots.
Yeah, it's not what you want. Okay. Two quick things. So for anybody who actually, and most people wouldn't know this just listening on the pod feed, we recently we tried something new. We're recording these things live, and our Knicks Film School patrons, shout out to all of our patrons out there who are in our Monroe tier or higher, can actually watch these along live with us and comment as we're doing it. So a couple things before we move on to our game ball. We got the wonderful and talented Kevin Danishevsky in the chat, noting that Mikal Bridges, 37% from three on non-heaves, because he's put up a few heaves this season, which is right at his career average. So good job by you, Kevin. And something else I wanted to, and also strength of schedule. No team has played more road games this year than the Knicks. So yeah, they're going to play some tough teams, but I think they've been a pretty good home team for a few years. I don't know. Just it feels like it is a home court advantage, right? Playing at MSG with Brunson there and everything. So I'm encouraged by that. And then just one other talking point that Kev brings up, and I want to get your thoughts on. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about the Minnesota game, which we are going to talk about in a certain context shortly when we give out our game balls. But Precious Achiuwa started the game alongside Karl-Anthony Towns, but a lot of conversation this week about whether that, from some people, now maybe it's a vocal minority, but I've certainly noticed it. People being like, "Oh, this is the way. Start Precious. Have Josh Hart off the bench." You're already smirking that evil smirk that you have. I I get it from the perspective of like Josh Hart is destined to be a sixth man on a championship team because he brings, I don't need to talk about what Josh Hart brings. We all know what Josh, but like that stuff that he brings is better off coming off the bench and like giving a spark and all of that. That part of it is fine. I am not sure how you watch that game and see that game turn on a dime, literally, when Precious goes to the bench and McBride comes in and opens up the spacing. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that before we move on.
Yeah, I mean, I one step further is what happened in that Pelicans game, John. How many minutes did Precious Achiuwa play in the second half?
The same as me and you, I believe.
Yeah. So, I hate going by daily or by plus minus of a game, but also believe Precious was a -4 in that Timberwolves game. When everyone else was excelling.
He was a -7 in the first half when they were up by 22 at halftime, I believe.
Yeah, the idea of Precious is certainly better than Precious Achiuwa himself. Would love to have a 6 foot.
Been a knock on him for a while for his career. Yeah.
I mean, he's 6'8", 6'9", good rebounder, great rebounder. He can be very good defensively. It's the shot. It's the inefficiency. There's something about the gelling. And we could talk about, will Josh Hart brings that energy that comes off the bench. And I agree, but he's also just a flat out better player than Precious Achiuwa by a country mile. And I know you're not saying otherwise. It's more,
I don't think
it's just like, okay, well, you're still losing something. You're also losing that spacing. And then when you lose the spacing, everyone else, it collapses. Like, why is it that we're talking about this really good Knicks team? It's primarily because of the offense. Why are they changing up their offense when we know it works? It's the defensive end. And then you don't want to find defensive players who then simply do not fit with the offense. So I get why we want to talk about Precious in such a way. I don't subscribe to that. I also don't think the Knicks necessarily subscribe to that, because when you want to be intentional about someone in life, you commit. A 1-year deal is not a commitment. That is not something that says we want you here long term. And that's all I will say until the January 15th.
I was about to say we don't have to talk trade anymore. You did enough trade talk for a month, literally on last week's episode. Look, is there a world where they make a deal and we don't have to rehash the names and bring someone in where you can envision it maybe making sense for them to move Josh Hart to the bench and start player X? That, like, I suppose I think I'd be surprised if this was not the starting lineup for the rest of this season, and honestly beyond this season. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Okay. Are we want to give out some game balls?
Yes.
Or is
we're doing a one big takeaway?
Oh yeah, we have to do a one big takeaway. Okay.
You should check the chat, John, which has a notification. I said, do you want to do one big takeaway?
To be fair, John is a small child.
That would assume that I can multitask. Also, I'm looking in the chat right now.
You want to know what happened, Jeremy? John logged in to StreamYard for the first time ever this week. So he now has multiple chats because he can now see the comments and all the graphics and the private chat and everything. And now everything's just so distracting.
What should I be looking at? I don't see anything.
In the private chat, do you want to make the Julius convo part of one big takeaway?
Hold on. Are you talking about the thing that says private chat?
Yes.
Oh, there it is. I wasn't on that.
Does it have a notification on it? Like, did it have a 1 that was red?
Yeah, it had a 3 actually, and it completely just.
So there were 3 messages.
There were 3
messages,
which makes sense.
Sent something.
Yeah, and then because Andrew, you had 2 messages, and I had 1. That does add up to.
There you go.
That's a 3. Yes, that's right.
That's 3. Gen 3, like the Stealth.
No one says there is a requirement of competence to be a host of a Knicks podcast.
Clearly,
I guess not. You could just give it to Izzy if you'd like. Just put the headphones on her and let's have her talk.
Well, that will be my one big takeaway. That it is not a requirement to host a popular Knicks podcast. Is to be competent. No. Yes.
Okay. Shout out to Juan Please. I had a delicious Juan Please last night at T Squared Social. You can check them out on all of the socials at Drink Juan, please. And you could also check out the website. Just Google Drink Juan, please. You go right to the website, find a store locator, find a store near you where you can get a 4-pack of Juan, please, which I look forward to enjoying one of after the next time the Knicks win, as has become my tradition. My one big takeaway, I'm not going to do a negative thing about Julius. My one big takeaway is this thing is coming together. And I think the second half against New Orleans, for as much as the Pelicans are a bad team, and for as much as Towns was might have been his worst game of the year, they won that game because they got a big time superstar performance from a big time superstar player, and the defense, the wing stop, right? Decided that they were going to shut off the water against New Orleans. And again, New Orleans, are they a great or even a good offense? No, they're not. But the force with which they completely flipped that game, again, to use your term, Jeremy, proof of concept. So my one big takeaway is this thing is coming together.
I completely agree. I'd say, so John, I have a question for you for my one big takeaway.
Shoot.
When you look at the Knicks, what teams would you put that are on par with the Knicks or better than the Knicks?
In the league right now?
In the league.
Boston, Oklahoma City, Cleveland, Dallas. That's I've tried to watch enough of Memphis. I'm still not fully sold on them. I would consider Memphis, but that's it.
Okay, so to be clear, Boston, Cleveland, Oklahoma City, and Dallas. That's your list.
Yeah,
it's fine if it is. That was 4 teams.
Yeah. Let's go with that. Yeah.
Okay. So the reason I mention that is if we're saying those are the 4 teams that the Knicks have that are on par or better than them. The Knicks play Boston 4 times this year. They play Cleveland 4 times, Oklahoma City twice, and Dallas twice. So that means it's 12. So of that means that there are 70 games where the Knicks play teams that you and I don't even disagree, are worse than the Knicks, which means that 85% of the Knicks season is against talent that we can, as consensus, feel the Knicks are better than and should therefore beat.
With some slim margins against some teams. Again, like if they're in Memphis, for instance, and Memphis is healthy, Memphis should be favored in that game. But
Sure.
yes, I agree with your larger premise.
No, and this isn't me holding you to the fire. This is me making a broader point, which is a lot of hubbub about the NBA and ratings and all that jazz. And it's the issue that I have because the Knicks are playing a very easy schedule in the month of December. But I hate when that happens because every game that they win, they feels like they should have won that. And every game they lose, they should have won that. But when they have the second best defensive rating, they're beating teams the way that they are supposed to be beating these teams. And as we, as kind of an overall society, look at the NBA and watch it less, follow it closely. There's kind of like this hater culture that's just bred through as well. I think Inside the NBA does a really good job of doing that, as entertaining as it may be sometimes.
You're preaching.
But it's the sort of thing where we should be enjoying this team, and I hope people are, even while they have an easy schedule, because what do you want from them? Like, where are your expectations if you feel like these games are must wins, so I can't really enjoy them? It says more about kind of the state of things than it does about the actual team itself, because this team is clicking and I'm enjoying watching them. I know you are too, and I'm sure most people are. But if you have this feeling of, well, it doesn't really matter until I see the Knicks beat a team that's at their level or better, just ask yourself then why is it that you're only focusing then on 15 or so % of games? Because the rest of the season is going to feel like crap, and then it's not even enjoyable. And then you ride or die on such a slim margin of games that it feels like it only compounds a problem in an era where parity is so great, but ironically, a lot of the viewership is down. And of course, as Adam Silver would say, there's I believe double-digit viewing down across cable as a whole. And I know a lot of these people are watching games on illegal streams and all of that. And I saw a point as well that I felt for a while, which is that the league has suffered in ways because they have the NBA has not been able to develop the next great young star. It's why we see LeBron and Curry and KD be put in prime time as much as they are, because they're great. They're fun to watch. And there's incredible amount of diverse international talent. And for whatever reason, for a lot of these players, it's just not clicking. There's a less of an identification for a lot of NBA fans, which is unfortunate because of how good they are. But I mean, I looked through the last 10 draft classes because I was curious about it. And, you know, it's Cat, Booker, Jalen Brown, Jason Tatum, Donovan Mitchell, Luka, SGA, Brunson, Ja, Anthony Edwards. There are probably other names that we could throw in there if you want, but something is just not latching on. And the feeling, of course, of Zion, supposedly the chosen one from an American basketball standards, he like simply not that guy. It's hard to find that American basketball player that so many fans can coalesce around. And I'm not even saying that's right. There's enough talent in the league right now, no matter where you're from, where it shouldn't be a factor. But it is. And it's just, the reason I bring it up is because look at the Knicks. It's an extension of that, or that is an extension of this, where something's not clicking, but it doesn't mean it can't. If you're loving this Knicks team, great, more power to you. If you're not, because it's, well, wait until I see something, totally respect it. But just keep in mind, the person you're probably hurting the most in this case might be yourself, because it's really enjoyable basketball. And it's a shame that we just, I don't know. And maybe the other thing is, I look at LeBron and KD and Curry and I forgot other names actually. Hallie, Mobley, Scotty.
Those
Paolo,
are the three.
Wemby. But yeah, but even still, like those three guys, again, why is so much on them? It's because LeBron, his first NBA Finals, 4th year. KD, 5th year. Curry, 6th year.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes time to get to that point, but it's been really hard to find an American basketball player, and I hate the fact that that I keep going back to that, but it often feels like that's the case. Like I'm still shocked that Jason Tatum isn't a bigger star than he is. And mind you, he's pretty big, but just something about it. It's not clicking. I don't know if it's just hater culture or what it is, but I implore you to watch this Knicks team, regardless of who they're playing, and enjoy the wins, because we've seen too many bad seasons.
My guess is if people are listening to this podcast, they are probably not the target audience for what you're talking about. That said, I think that's as smart, that's as prescient a thing as you've ever said. And it, like, I don't know if this is overly simplistic. What is the joy of sports if not the journey? Like, if all you did was fast forward to the playoffs or like the finals or the conference finals, because if you're of the opinion where it's like, well, this team should be in the conference finals, so I'll start paying attention when they get to the conference finals. If they don't get to the conference finals, then F them. It's the season's failure. Well, like, why? So your investment is going to be a month, you know? That does, I mean, you say it out loud, it sounds ridiculous. Right. And yet I do agree that there are people out there who are kind of somewhat at least taking that view, but like, I guess there's always going to be people out there like that. So it is, you know, it is what it is. I'm not as bothered by the ratings conversation as I guess maybe some people are. I think people who love the NBA are going to watch the NBA. It's kind of, you know, what it is. And we do, and we're loving it. It's been a great year, and that's all there is to it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's less of a me chastising people and more of a, I hope that they get to enjoy it. Knowing this might be a vacuum, because to your point, I think a lot of the people who listen to this love basketball in general, but it's fun. It's a good outlet for life, and it'll cause some stress, but yeah, it's, to your point, it's the journey. Journey's fun. The
journey is only the journey because of the stress that is induced along the way. If there was no stress induced along the way, it wouldn't be.
It's lore. Who doesn't love lore?
Yeah. Well said. I have nothing else I could add. It was great. Okay, let's give out some game balls. Game ball, of course, is given to a player, coach, or entity that stood out this week and deserves special recognition. Jeremy Cohen, because your co-host is a spineless chicken shit. You get to go first this week. Congratulations. You get first dibs.
Thank you. Genuinely not sure who I want to give the game ball to. I feel like there are a lot of deserving candidates.
I think there's three. I think there's three very, very possible worthy possibilities.
Yeah, well, I'll leave one of the main ones for you. I'm going to try to spread the wealth here. I don't believe I have given a game ball to Jalen Brunson this year.
No.
So in the event that I haven't, and if I have, it's okay to give him a second one. I'm going to give it to Jalen Brunson. Was fine overall for the Minnesota game. He just took over. And the thing I love the most about Jalen Brunson in the Pelicans game is that killer instinct that he has, where he'll crush you if he wants to. And mind you, it doesn't happen every single time, but he's got that gene where I trust him implicitly to do what he needs to do to get the job done. And I think the thing that we're seeing is the Knicks struggle in matchups against elite point of attack defenders. Like why are the Hawks a tough matchup for the Knicks? A lot of times because it has to do with Dyson Daniels.
Yeah.
And this is something where, again, I don't love the fact that the Knicks have lost 2 games to the Hawks this year. But if there's ever a time for the Knicks to figure out how they react when the opponent takes away one of the heads of the snake, of the Hydra, that's where you learn it. You win and you learn. And sometimes in your wins, you can do some learning too. And what we learned from Jalen Brunson time and time again is just trust him. Because when he didn't get that and one call, after that, that's where I kind of knew, he's gonna be fine. He's going to take this personally. And I thought the officiating as a whole, also for that Pelicans game, tale of two halves. But the Knicks benefited from those calls because they hadn't before in the first half, certainly. And a huge reason is Jalen Brunson just decided to do Jalen Brunson things, and shows how important, of course, he is to this team. So love him. Glad he's here.
And you bring up Dyson Daniels. Herb Jones, pretty good point of attack defender in his own right. Mm-hmm. And I know he wasn't maybe on Brunson quite as much as Daniels was during those Hawks matchups, but he was on him a lot. And I thought the Knicks did a really nice job after Brunson probably unnecessarily tried to go at Herb a couple times in the first half, and it caused some turnovers, some unsightly turnovers, unnecessary errors. Him individually and as a team, I thought they figured out some really nice stuff on that end as the game went on. So again, that's what you want to see. You want to see a team learn, as you say. I know Cat's the obvious pick here. Because he had as good a return game as you can imagine coming back to his home city in a game that I know for me, I was worried oh my God, are the emotions going to be too much for him? And then he started out with those 4 turnovers in the first quarter, one kind of worse than the next. And I was like, oh my goodness. And then he had the game that he had, 32 points, 20 rebounds, 5 assists, perfect from 3, first player I think ever to do that in NBA history.
100%. True shooting percentage.
Yeah, there you go. Absurd. And yet, man, I think I have to go Mikal Bridges here. If I am honoring the award for what it is supposed to be, which is a honoree for the week at large, considering you could make a pretty cogent argument that Bridges was actually better than Towns in Towns' return game, and arguably more important to the Knicks' ultimate success in that game, even though Towns' numbers were off the charts. And then you factor in the fact that Towns was very poor against the Pelicans, and Bridges' defense was a massive part of what they did against New Orleans. And I'm saying all this, and I should have Bridges' stats handy from the Pelicans game. Here, I have him right here. He was 7 of 16 from the field, so not the most efficient night, but still 18 points. He was a plus 20 for the game, had a couple of steals. His plus minus, I think now might be over the last 10 games or whereabouts, best plus minus in the NBA. So yeah, I will go with Mikal Bridges.
I think it was Ben Kim Gervey who I remember was talking about Tibbs needed to find his Luol Deng. And this was around the time the Knicks had Josh Hart or acquired him recently, and then they got OG, and then it was like, okay, OG is his Luol Deng, but there's an argument to be made that Mikal Bridges could also be a feature of it, and then you kind of go back to maybe Tibbs just has multiple Luol Dengs, and that's great. And the reason I bring it up is because I totally agree with. I think it's a great call to give it to Mikal, as deserving as Cat would be, and not to say he shouldn't have had it, but the up and down Pelicans game in a sample size of 2, I think Mikal sneaks in there. The ability to have stability as one of your 5 guys throughout, and to your point, yes, we can talk about the minutes, but Mikal Bridges, his track record, I don't want to jinx anything, but his track record up to this point tells us he has been a beacon of health. And when you're a beacon of health, but also relied upon so heavily, it minimizes so many of your problems. And so the ability for the Knicks to be able to go into the trade deadline or beyond and say, we have someone that we trust at this key position who's going to soak up a ton of minutes, who's going to hit open shots, who's going to play good defense, sometimes even great defense. Of course, sometimes they went in the wrong direction. But the reliability standpoint of Mikal Bridges is something that I just don't want Knicks fans to take for granted, because we've seen how difficult it can be. And do the minutes police maybe have a gripe that I think could be valid? Sure. Yeah, yes, absolutely. And I think that's then where the front office has to come in and add talent that supports that. Landry Shamet on the way, maybe other players as well. At least from hey, the dog days of the NBA season, let's give guys a little bit of a breather. But with Mikal, again, it comes back to trust. I trust that he's going to figure it out, and he has. I trust that he's going to be able to stay healthy and be a supportive player that I don't have to worry about what happens when he's on-offs or when he's off the court. It's really important, and it's going to help the Knicks quite a lot in the future.
Well said. If Tibbs had 5 Luol Dengs, he would play them all 48 minutes a night. Yes. Honorable mention, by the way, Jericho Sims, hell of a game. We didn't spend a lot of time talking about him, but his impact, not only on the defensive end, but setting really good screens for Jalen Brunson, I thought was a big part of that win. Yes. Okay. Detention given to a player, coach, or entity that deserves to sit down for a while and think about what they did wrong. I'm going first on this one. Man, I feel bad. Yeah, I guess I have to give it to Precious, don't I? He was.
You don't have to give it to anyone.
I don't have to give it to anyone. They had a 2-0 week. That's right.
Yeah, you can go outside of the realm of the Knicks if you'd like.
Undefeated week, which means we don't have to award anybody.
Give it to the Steelers. I watched that game with you yesterday.
Oh yeah,
they
sure.
Lost to Sean's Ravens.
Yeah, Steelers. Come on, man. You got a championship caliber defense. I know Russ has been really good. Shout out to Yash for always being on Russell Wilson's bandwagon.
Yash is John's friend, for nobody who knows who that is, by the way.
He's been on the pod, friend of the pod, Yash Wanchmouth. I'll give it to the Steelers. You gotta figure it out a little bit more on offense here. I don't know if they should have traded for a receiver or what, but it's just like, come on, man. You got gobsmacked by the Ravens. It's not okay.
Yeah.
Jeremy?
I don't know what it's like to care about a football team, because I care about losing now, I guess. That's all that motivates me.
Are you guys getting the first pick?
I mean, knowing the Giants, probably not. But they'll find a way to mess it up somehow. We'll see.
I got to be honest. I'm flying high right now with my Lions at the moment.
We're
13-2 or 12-2, whatever it is. And I got to tell you, Jeremy, this bandwagon thing, it's life-changing, you know? Yeah. Any tell-all articles from The Athletic that get written about your old team you just don't care about anymore? You're just hoping your team gets healthy enough for the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Andrew, who's your favorite player on the Lions?
Calvin Johnson.
Okay. What's his Madden rating? Just curious.
Very high.
Yeah.
I think my old team would have drafted him now.
Or traded for him at least.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw a different MSG team into detention, which is the New York Rangers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Look, I spend most of my time obviously focused on the Knicks, and then the Yankees, and then to a lesser degree, the Rangers and the Giants. But the Rangers, and Andrew, I'm glad you're back up here so you can support this, because I know you watch them more than I do. From my vantage point as a casual fan of the Rangers, I don't know if I've ever seen just a more spineless, sad
Oof, my
iteration
goodness.
of a New York sports team. I mean, the way that this
Good
team
Lord.
every year pretty much dominated, and then to be 2 wins from the Stanley Cup last year, and then getting there, I thought going into that series that the Eastern Conference Finals winner is going to win the Stanley Cup. And it wasn't the Rangers, and it was the Panthers, and they miraculously held on from a feisty Edmonton down 3-0. But looking at how this team has just wilted in such a way, the vibes are horrendous. It's back to being where one MSG team is always good and the other is not. It's the complete inverse. And as a fan that loves the Knicks more than the Rangers, I'm fine with it right now. But the ability to have your GM just crush players' trade values in such a way that the team loves their captain. They trade the captain. If you want to move Trouba, I understand. For context, of course, Jacob Trouba, not been a great defender, highly overpaid, but the way that the whole thing was handled, and then the players' response to that of just deciding to give up for a couple weeks after a really hot start. I'm in awe of how the wheels have fallen off this quick. Again, not a car guy, but I know that cars are supposed to go with 4 wheels, and when you press go, or at least when you put the gas on, and that is not what's happening with the Rangers.
John, to give you the context or some type of basketball analogy or comparison.
Yeah.
So the Knicks won 50 games last year, but we have the January sample that we point to as like, what if that team was like the whole year, right? Imagine if you saw that January team for a full season and they won 65 games and lost in the conference finals, right, to Boston.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Then imagine the very next season, they started out 4-18 with the same roster. Like,
is that what the Rangers are?
Well, no, they started out well.
So,
and then they
Jeremy's point, like they started 6-6 or maybe 10-6, and then went through a stretch where they went 4-14 over an 18-game stretch with the same group too, with the same talent on the floor.
Got it.
There's an argument to be made that it's kind of like if the Sixers of this year were healthy, but just had a similar approach to the year, like they were just that bad.
There's an age thing. I'm making the comp that the Rangers won the President's Trophy last year.
Yes.
So that's the thing. They're were literally the best team in the NHL last year. And then this year they went through a stretch. I believe it was 4 wins in 18 games. That's how bad it was. And now they're in full rebuild mode.
I'm sorry to hear that. That does sound pretty awful.
James Dolan is very thankful for his basketball team these days. Because the hockey team and the big ball in Vegas is not doing well.
Keep paying attention to all those things and not the Knicks. Okay. Predictions. Let's do it. Jeremy won the week. Congratulations to you. You picked 2-0 after I picked 1-1. Good job by you. We have 4 games this week, including a back-to-back next weekend. So we got Toronto at the Garden on Monday. We have on Christmas, 12 o'clock noon, Spurs. You could watch that game on, I believe, ABC, or they have some kind of a cartoon Disney version of the game airing on one of ESPN's channels. And then back-to-back Friday at Orlando, and then Saturday at Washington. Tricky little week for what it's worth. So, yeah, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Well, first off, are you going to watch the Disney version?
No.
Oh, because you hate fun. That's right.
I don't need to say anything.
Why would you? Especially in Orlando. You hate all things Orlando when it comes to mascots. I'm going to put you in a tough spot here, and I'm going to go 3-1.
I knew you were going to.
Yeah, of course. I mean, do I believe that the Knicks go 4-0? I do. But I want to make you have to choose. That's my holiday present to you.
Thanks for that big old turd.
No gift receipt.
Don't like that. I just looked up Paolo's where he is in his injury recovery, because I've been ever since his injury. I've been looking at this late December game, and I've been thinking I I mean, there's been no news to come out other than something 9 days ago that he was beginning some next stage of his rehab. I don't know. But Franz is out for that game. Suggs, I think, will probably be back, but it looks like Mo Wagner, who obviously gave the Knicks a lot of issues last time these two teams played. He may have a serious injury. He suffered. We hope he's okay. So that's a game that I'm looking at. I mean, the Wizards game, I know it's the second night of a back-to-back on the road, the whole thing. Man. Toronto games at home, San Antonio games at home. All right, screw it. I'll go 4-0.
All right.
I'll go 4-0.
Hope you win.
I'll feel it. I have like the Spurs have been playing well, and we've had the game was on last night at T Squared, and they put a hurting on some. I forget who the hell they played, but they blew them out.
Portland.
Yes, wait, who?
It's Portland.
Portland.
Oh yes, that's right, and that was right after Portland beat Denver, which I don't know what that says about any of those teams. Whatever. The Spurs are playing well. Wemby's playing out of his mind. I think the Knicks are going to win that game on Christmas. I do. I think they're going to figure out a way to win that game on Christmas. I think they're going to beat Toronto. And then it comes down to, again, Orlando and Washington. And that's why that Orlando game is the one I'm looking at. But like this is now the third time they've played the Magic this year. They know it's going to be a dogfight. They know the mentality they have to come into the game with. So yeah, we'll see what happens. We both hope I win. So there you go. Okay, that's it for us. Andrew, did we forget anything?
Nothing as far as the format of the show is concerned. The schedule for this week is as follows. Most likely a pregame pod on Monday. Oh, no pregame pod on Monday. If it won't be live, I should say, because tomorrow is technically the first of a couple Christmases. Going out to Long Island to see Pastor Claudio in the old Obi Hive. We got to rename that thing. It might have to be the Julius Memorial at this point. Then John doing the post game on Monday. Then something on Tuesday while all you are traveling for the holiday. And then I'm doing the post game on Wednesday. And then Thursday, John and former returning guest, Mr. John Schmielk, will be joining. So tune in for that all week. And I have a shout out to give. If it's cool. I made the very dumb decision to go to the Roosevelt Field Mall on Long Island the day before, or the last Saturday before Christmas, yesterday. And we went to, not to get into details, we went to K Jewelers to get my wife's ring inspected. And walking out, I ran into a guy named Mike, who was at Dick's Sporting Goods and said he's a big fan of the pod and appreciates what we do.
Hey,
Mike, you made a very miserable trip to the Roosevelt Field Mall. Very worth it. So thank you, Mike. And of course, thank you to everybody that came to T Squared last night that made a very miserable trip into the city on a very cold night in New York. Also worth it. So thank you to all of you that continue to support us in ways that are unimaginable.
Thank you to everybody who came to T Square, but we also had quite a few people who came from pretty far out of town. We had someone in from LA, we had someone in from Arizona, and one more special shout out to the couple that joined us from Kentucky who just got married a few days ago. Couple of great Knicks fans. So thanks to them, and congratulations again on your nuptials. I think that's it. Jeremy, anything else from you?
I won't see people before the 25th. So happy holidays to all. Hope you have a wonderful time with your families or by yourself. That's, just wishing you good cheer and happy Knicks 4-0.
I love that you're wishing me luck on predictions. This is
great. No, I'm not. I'm wishing the Knicks luck, to be clear, but by association, yes, I suppose I am, John.
What's our season record at now, Andrew? Do you know?
We don't have to talk about it. It's fine.
You went on a bit of a heater, John.
I know. So. That's why I'm asking.
But John's on his Rangers era, his 2024-25 Rangers era.
Clearly. Yeah. Although, didn't we adapt his thinking, Jeremy, of the rules that even when he loses, he wins, right. Or when he loses? So technically, you might be tied at this point,
or it might be winning. In which case, stop the count, and let's just
all right.
crown me again.
Never mind. Forget I asked. Thank you, everybody, for checking out another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. We appreciate you guys so much. Be sure to leave us a 5-star rating or a kind review if you would like to reciprocate that appreciation. And Andrew told you what we got coming up for this week. Excited about all that. I will, of course, talk to you guys before Christmas, but have a great holiday week, and we will talk to you soon. Peace out.